The food industry has spent decades funding research designed to reduce nutrition to calories in versus calories out, because that framework lets them sell you a 100-calorie pack of some bioengineered food and then call it healthy. Just because it says only 100 calories doesn't mean it's good for you.
Welcome to Health Decoded, your number one source for real health information, with your hosts, Dr. Alessi and Matt Tack.
Here's a number I want you to sit with: 93. That's the percentage of American adults who are metabolically unhealthy, according to a 2019 analysis published in Metabolic Syndrome and Related Disorders at the University of North Carolina. So they looked at 5 markers. They looked at blood glucose, triglycerides, HDL cholesterol, blood pressure, and waist circumference. And they found that only 6.8% of adults met the optimal thresholds for all 5. 93%. And yet the interventions that actually move those numbers, most of them are completely free. You don't need a prescription. You don't even need a gym membership, no supplement stack. And so today I want to walk you through what I consider the 5 highest leverage interventions for fat loss and metabolic health. And I call them levers because the right lever applied in the right place gives you an outsized return on your effort. So let's just get right into it. I'm Dr. Alessi. Welcome to the Health Decoded podcast. I'm excited to have you on the show today. Let's start with lever number 1. Lever number 1 is walk 8,000 steps a day. I want to start here because this is the most underrated prescription in medicine. We have so much data showing that hitting 8,000 steps per day is associated with a 51% lower risk of all-cause mortality compared to 4,000 steps. So that comes from a study by St. Maurice and colleagues published in JAMA in 2020. They followed about 4,800 adults for a decade. And here's what most people don't know. The benefit plateaued after about 12,000 steps. So you're not getting meaningfully more protection by grinding to 15K. The dose response curve flattens. 8,000 should be your target daily. And so here's the mechanism that most people miss. Walking at a conversational pace keeps you in a zone where fat is your primary fuel source, not glucose. Your respiratory exchange ratio, which is the ratio of CO2 produced to oxygen consumed, sits below 0.85 at this intensity. That is the biochemical signature of fat oxidation. So you are literally mobilizing stored fat as fuel. And now beyond direct fat burning, consistent daily walking improves insulin sensitivity through a completely separate pathway. The muscle contraction activates the AMP, activated protein kinase, which drives GLUT4 transporters to the surface of your muscle cells. Now, those transporters pull glucose out of your bloodstream independent of insulin. There was a study in 2022 in Sports Medicine Journal found that a single 20-minute post-meal walk reduced your postprandial glucose spike by up to 30% compared to just sitting. That's basically a free metabolic intervention that you can deploy after every single meal. And one more thing, the 10,000 step target is not science. It came from a 1965 Japanese marketing campaign for a pedometer called the Manpo-K, which literally translates to 10,000 steps meter. So it was never really derived from a clinical trial. 8,000 steps is more where the mortality data is the strongest. And so, don't let a 60-year-old marketing slogan set your health targets. Focus on what the science shows. 8,000 steps a day for that metabolic boost, completely free. That's number 1. Number 2, and this is definitely ranked number 2 for me, building muscle. So resistance training at least twice a week. Skeletal muscle is the largest glucose disposal organ in your body, accounting for roughly 80% of insulin-stimulated glucose uptake. But here's what makes it extraordinary from a metabolic standpoint. It doesn't need insulin to do its job. When you contract a muscle, mechanical stress triggers a signaling cascade that causes that GLUT4 transporter to migrate to the cell surface and pull glucose out of your bloodstream directly without insulin. This is why resistance training improves blood sugar control even in people with significant insulin resistance. You're building a parallel glucose disposal system that bypasses a broken pathway entirely. The resting metabolic rate effect is also a real and compounding effect. Each pound of muscle tissue burns approximately 6 calories per day at rest. So 10 pounds of added muscle, achievable within realistically a year of consistent training, is 60 extra calories per day burned doing nothing. Now, across a decade, that's the difference between maintaining your body composition and slowly losing ground. The visceral fat data is particularly strong as well. A 2022 systematic review by Lopez and colleagues in the Obesity Review Journal analyzed 58 randomized controlled trials and found that resistance training alone reduced visceral fat by an average of 5% with no dietary changes. Now, visceral fat, if you're not familiar, is the fat that is stored around your organs, and it is the fat that is most strongly linked to metabolic disease, cardiovascular risk, and type 2 diabetes. You cannot target this fat with cardio as effectively as you can with resistance training. So the frequency you need to focus on, 2 sessions per week is your minimum effective dose. Out of a 2016 meta-analysis in the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research, found no significant difference in muscle growth between 2 and 3 sessions per week for trained individuals. So 2 days is defensible. Equipment, irrelevant. You can use body weight, bands, free weights. They all produce sufficient mechanical stimulus. What matters is progressive overload. That means making the work harder over time. That's the signal. Everything else is really just the vehicle. So this should be 2 days a week of full body training, whether that's HIIT workout, whether that's doing some level of body weight or bands, making sure we're activating lower and upper body muscle groups. Lever number 3, and this is a big one to complement lever number 2, is prioritizing protein with every meal. Protein is really doing 3 jobs simultaneously that no other macronutrient can even replicate. So let me walk through each one. First, satiety. Protein suppresses ghrelin, which is your primary hunger hormone, more powerfully than fat or carbohydrates. It simultaneously stimulates the release of peptide YY and GLP-1 from the gut. GLP-1 is the satiety hormone. So the same drugs that people are taking, we can stimulate by eating enough protein. It's also the exact pathway that's targeted by those Ozempic and similar GLP-1 agonist drugs. Protein stimulates that system naturally with every meal, without a prescription. A 2005 study by Weigel and colleagues in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition showed that increasing protein from 15% to 30% of daily calories produce a sustained reduction in caloric intake of over 400 calories with no instruction to restrict food. So basically, increase protein, you will eat less overall. Second, the thermic effect of food. This is awesome because the energy cost of digesting and metabolizing protein runs 25 to 30% of its caloric value. Fat costs 5%, carbohydrates cost 5 to 10%. And a meta-analysis confirmed that high-protein diets increase 24-hour energy expenditure by 80 to 100 calories per day purely through this thermogenic effect. Before any change in activity, you burn more calories processing the food itself. And then third, muscle preservation during fat loss. This is where most diets will fail. When you're in a caloric deficit, restricting calories, your body will actually catabolize or cannibalize muscle tissue for energy unless protein is high enough to prevent it. A 2016 study by Longlin and colleagues in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition put participants on a severe 40% caloric deficit for 4 weeks. The group eating 1.1 grams of protein per pound of body weight simultaneously lost fat and gained muscle. The low protein group lost fat and muscle. It was the same deficit, but entirely different body composition outcome. So what's your target? Aim for 0.8 to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. Front load at breakfast. Research consistently shows that a high protein breakfast reduces total daily caloric intake and appetite for the rest of the day. Things like eggs, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, start there. It doesn't have to be super complicated. Lever number 4, protect your sleep. 7 to 9 hours consistently. Sleep deprivation is one of the most reliable ways to dismantle your metabolic health, and the mechanisms are more direct than most clinicians actually acknowledge. In a controlled study at the University of Chicago, healthy young men restricted to 5.5 hours of sleep for 2 weeks showed a 25% reduction in insulin sensitivity. That's a significant drop, comparable to what you would expect from gaining 20 to 30 pounds of body fat, produced purely by sleep restriction. There was no diet change and no reduction in activity. That's because the hormonal disruption is equally severe. A 2004 study found that even 2 nights of sleep restriction increased ghrelin levels by 28% and decreased leptin by 18%. Ghrelin up, leptin down. So now you are chemically compelled to eat more, and not more of everything. Subjects reported they had increased appetite specifically for calorie-dense, high-carbohydrate foods, things like chips, bread, cookies. So sleep deprivation doesn't just make you hungry, it steers you toward the worst possible choices. The body composition consequences are also the part that nobody talks about. In a study by Nedcheva and colleagues out of the same institution, 2010, participants on an identical caloric deficit, sleeping 5.5 hours, lost 55% less fat and 60% more muscle than the participants who slept 8.5 hours. They had the same diet, the same deficit. The only variable was sleep. So what's the mechanism? Well, during slow wave sleep, your body secretes the majority of its daily growth hormone. Growth hormone is the primary signal for fat mobilization and muscle preservation during a deficit. So if you cut sleep, you're cutting that slow wave sleep, you're cutting growth hormone, and your body will shift from burning fat to burning muscle. So you are working directly against the goal of every diet you've ever tried. The intervention is simple, but this is a non-negotiable. Consistent sleep and wake times, including on the weekends. Research on social jet lag, the pattern of sleeping in 2 to 3 hours more on the weekends, it shows it is independently associated with increased metabolic syndrome risk. Your circadian rhythm is not something that just you can ignore on Saturday and then reset it on Monday. The biology doesn't work that way. So try to aim to go to bed and wake up within 30 minutes of the same time every single day. Now, lever number 5, and this is one that really can turn the needle if you're hitting all the others, eliminating ultra-processed food. So food quality comes before calories. And I'm going to end it here because this is the lever with the most impact and is also the most corrupted public conversation. The food industry has spent decades funding research designed to reduce nutrition to calories in versus calories out, because that framework lets them sell you a 100-calorie pack of some bioengineered food and then call it healthy. Just because it says only 100 calories doesn't mean it's good for you. The science doesn't support that. Ultra-processed foods, defined by the NOVA classification system as industrial manufactured products containing ingredients not found in a home kitchen. Things like emulsifiers, artificial flavor compounds, modified starches, hydrogenated oils. They're not just calorie dense. They're engineered to defeat the biological systems that regulate your appetite. So the goal here is literally to make you crave more. The definitive study in 2019 in the Journal of Cell Metabolism, this was a rare randomized control inpatient trial at the NIH Clinical Center. So basically participants lived on site for 4 weeks, were randomly assigned to either an ultra-processed or minimally processed diet with food available, meaning they could eat as much as they wanted. Both diets were matched for total offered calories, macronutrients, sugar, fat, and fiber. The only variable was the degree of processing of the food. The ultra-processed group consumed an average of 508 more calories per day and gained approximately 2 pounds over the trial period. The whole food group simultaneously consumed less and lost approximately 2 pounds. No dietary instructions were given to either group. The food itself drove the entire difference. That's huge. So the proposed mechanisms, ultra-processed foods are consumed faster. They require less chewing, and they're designed for rapid oral processing, which outpaces the gut-derived satiety hormone response. So basically GLP-1 and peptide YY, which are your fullness signals, they need time to register. If you eat fast enough and the signal arrives after you've already eaten. Beyond that, ultra-processed food is systematically fiber depleted, which degrades the gut microbiome. Butyrate-producing bacteria, which depend entirely on fermentable fiber, directly regulate GLP-1 secretion and gut barrier integrity. So you strip the fiber, you lose the bacteria, you blunt the satiety signal, and you increase intake. The system fails very predictably. So the practical rule I give every patient, and I'm giving to you today, is buy food that's one ingredient. An apple is an apple. Chicken is chicken. Oats, rice, you get the picture. If the ingredient list has 25 items and requires a chemistry background to get through, it is actively working against your biology. You cannot out-exercise, out-walk, or out-sleep a diet built primarily on processed food. This is the floor that everything else sits on. So there you have it, 5 levers, all of them free, all of them backed by mechanistic science, not epidemiologically guesswork, and not some influencer anecdote. Here's what I want you to notice before you go. These levers are not independent of each other. They compound. Walking improves insulin sensitivity. Muscle improves it further. Sleep preserves the muscle you've built. Protein supports and protects it. And food quality determines whether any of it can work in the first place, because you cannot build insulin sensitivity on a foundation of ultra-processed food. The system is interconnected, and every lever you pull makes the next one easier to hold. The challenge is never information. You just got more in 15 minutes than most people get from their annual physical. The challenge is choosing one thing and executing consistently until it requires no willpower, then stacking the next. So do this. Pick your first lever, apply it for 2 weeks, then come back, pick the next. When you can create a sustainable, non-negotiable lifestyle and then build on top of that, that's how you win. All studies referenced today will be in the show notes. If this episode was useful, please share this with one person. Send this to somebody you know who may be struggling with fat loss, metabolism, and that's the highest compliment that we can get. That's how we help grow this message. That's how we help change more lives. If you ever want to get in touch with us, go to our website, ascendfunctionalhealth.com. You can contact us there. We'd be happy to share your story, answer any questions. And I thank you for tuning in today. I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Health Decoded.
Thank you for tuning in to Health Decoded, where we break down the truth about all things health and empower you to take charge of your well-being. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear this. For more resources and personalized support, visit us at alessifunctionalhealth.com and sign up for our newsletter. To hear your questions answered live on the show, send them to ask@alessifxhealth.com. That's ask@alessifxhealth.com. Until next time, stay curious, stay empowered, and remember, your health is in your hands.